Welcome. You're listening to 360. I'm your host, Antonio. To manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. And to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power. I threw y'all curves this morning, I know, man. Grand risings to you and Happy New Year. Got a great show for you today. Cleveland just gonna take its time, for this weather being ushered in, but that's okay. That's okay. This is Cleveland. We gonna wait on it. Great show for you today. In the remote studio, we got Brother Vince. What's going on?
Well, we got 36 degrees outside and the promise of snow today. And then on Monday, we're going to be looking at a possible high of 61 degrees. So let's hope that spring gets here sooner than later because, we're growing weary of this winter thing, bro. It's supposed to be spring.
Hey, buddy. I'll tell you, it just beat you down, boy.
Well, so we're going to roll
Absolutely.
with the punches anyway. So, we got some new things coming your way at Larchmere Arts. I'll be making some announcements in the next couple of weeks. Also want to remind folks that we are continuing to develop income streams, passive income streams. If you're interested in learning how you can make money while you sleep, do not hesitate. Text 216-780-2470. That's 216-780-2470. Text cash flow. We'll get back to you and we'll get that hooked up for you. So aside from that, we're just looking forward to the show that we're going to be doing today. We have a very special guest with us today. He's going to be participating in an upcoming conference that is being sponsored by Happy Films. It's called the One Africa Power and Unity Conference. It takes place Saturday, April 30th, 2022, and Sunday, May 1st. Amongst the speakers that are slated to be participating, we have Dr. Maulana Karinga, one of our favorite sisters, Professor Baina Bello, Professor James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Chike Akua, and our guest. He is Asar Imhotep. He's a software developer, cultural theorist, and Africana researcher from Houston, Texas, whose research focuses the cultural, linguistic, and philosophical links between the ancient Egyptian civilizations and modern Bantu cultures of Central and South Africa. He's currently continuing his education in computer science with a concentration in artificial intelligence. He's a noted speaker and philosopher and is currently organizing efforts in a nationwide venture titled the African American Cultural Development Project, a national project aimed at creating a framework for an African American culture which will help vitally stimulate the economic, political, scientific, and cultural spheres of African American life in the United States. He's also the founder of Black Science Month in October that highlights and encourages African achievement and advancement in the STEM fields. Welcome to 360 Info Network, our great brother, Asar Imhotep.
Peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Thank you for having me. Peace and light to your listening audience, and I'm excited and look forward to our conversation today.
All right, my brother. Appreciate you taking out the time as well. Yes, I was going over some of the things that we talked about as well as some of the information I retrieved about you a little bit. And, I found it kind of interesting, when you made a point of when we talk about linguistics and different dialects throughout the continent, and people, I don't think we don't zero in on how important the etymology and language is in trying to uncover a lot of the mysteries that we're still in search of to today. And you made a statement like, usually when something is unclear in English, it tends to have African roots, because do you think we lose a lot due to interpretation and things like that when we studying things on the continent?
All righty. For a little bit of context, we got to understand first and foremost that all human life derives out of Africa as all of the evidence from, genetics, archaeology, even language has informed us up to this point. And so when Africans left the continent of Africa, of course they had language. And over time, because of dialects, because of the mutation of sounds in languages, the languages become very distinct and unintelligible to different groups and populations. Only through a systematic scientific process that we call the historical comparative method are we able to check and trace the etymology of words and compare languages, and to show that although certain words and phrases are in fact differently pronounced, that they are in fact one and the same and are traceable to a single parent language for which these terms have been inherited. So a lot of terms, a lot of lexemes, a lot of words that you find that have evolved through the Germanic languages, for which English is a part of, or the Romance languages, are in fact terms that originate in Africa. Some have been borrowed, and a lot have just been inherited. And so sometimes when they're unable to trace a word or get clarity and understanding in an Indo-European language, what I often do is to check if there are, in fact, evolutions, that evolve from Africa itself. And oftentimes that is the case. Sometimes it just originates in that language group because people do make up words. But often you'll find some of these terms actually have African origins, and the African languages bring clarity to some of the lexemes that may be inherited in modern English.
Yeah, that always seems to be the case, because, we're still trying to unravel and uncover, what was going on the continent. We also always find it interesting that when they speak of Egypt, they never tend to get into the religion and the philosophies of what was going on. And that tends, to me, to keep a divide between us really fully connecting with the motherland. Because if we were to do that, if TV per se, because that's what a lot of us listen to, did a great job in talking about some of the spiritual systems of Africa and culture, I think it would be more clearer to us as a people here in the diaspora, the connection, because religion tends to keep us separated from that. So we know things like Mod and what their philosophy and the things that they believe. We'll be able to kind of correlate and tie that in to some of the things that we practice right now and see that relationship. But since they don't, bring that type of clarity out and show that connection, that tends to keep us divided. What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, it's a concerted effort, because since the birth of Egyptology, there has been within the mainstream academic field of Egyptology a concerted effort to separate Egypt from Africa. And so they made up this mythological location called the Middle East, and they put Egypt there, and they orient the people and the cultures there. And even to this date, you have many people who live in Egypt who will argue that Egypt had nothing to do with Africa or the Africans, and is firmly situated on the continent of Africa. So you can see the cognitive dissonance there. But more so, they understand that, you know, when we're looking at all of the achievements of ancient Egypt, good or bad, that it is grounded in a particular type of philosophy, a particular type of worldview and thought. And if you're able to connect that worldview and thought and philosophy and religion and things to inner Africa, then you have a problem for the normal narrative that ancient Egypt had nothing to do with Africa. Because then what is your explanatory model for these commonalities with the Yoruba people in Nigeria, or the Wolof people in Senegal, or the Bakongo people in the Democratic Republic of Congo? How do we get these particular commonalities? For example, and briefly, the ancient Egyptians called the divine force Necher. And there was another word, Necher, that means pole or stick. There's another word, Necher, that means white cloth. And because these words sounded alike, they merged the concepts together so that the symbol for the divine force, or gods, or powers, so to speak, was in fact an erect pole or stick that was wrapped around with a white cloth. And so this phenomenon in linguistics we call paronymy. And you'll find in places like Nigeria and Togo, Benin, and even in Congo, when they want to represent the divine force, that they will stick a pole in the ground, and at the top of the pole they will put a white cloth that will wrap it around. Even in places in Zimbabwe, to represent the ancestors or the divine powers, they will have these strips of cloth that are sometimes red and oftentimes white, and they'll even, wrap them around the body of the person or the coffin itself. But this idea that the divine can be represented by a stick with a cloth at the top of it, as a result of transatlantic slave holocaust, it carried itself all the way into the diaspora in places like Brazil, in places like Haiti, in the Caribbean islands, and even in places like New Orleans, Louisiana. So now it has evolved from simply the stick on a pole, or a stick or a pole with the cloth on top, to even umbrellas that have these strips of cloth on the edges of them. And of course, with the umbrella, you still have the particular stick. And so this is why, like, when you go to funerals in New Orleans, you will still see especially in the second line, people walking behind the coffins or whatnot with the umbrellas with the cloth strips at the funeral. And these are certain types of carryovers and ideas that people don't even realize that is common throughout Africa, that you find its most ancient expression in ancient Egypt, but that is still prevalent in these places from which African Americans, for example, derived and came from. And so when you're able to make these connections, and note that these words are still Necher in these particular areas, just with a slightly different pronunciation. And so, for example, that cloth in Zimbabwe is called Njora for the funerary cloth, and that special cloth that they use is Njora. And so when we're able to make these connections, it's hard for them to try to deny the connections and the Africanness of ancient Egyptian society. And this is why we have the problems that we do regarding trying to explain narrative and of the Africanness and connections between ancient Egypt and Central and West Africa.
Yeah.
Right.
Your research has seen. We going to the break now?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
11:20 right here on AM 1490 WERE. You're listening to 360 Info Network with Antonio and Vince Robinson. Our guest is Asar Imhotep. He'll be participating in the upcoming Power and Unity Conference to take place in Detroit, Michigan on April 30th and May 1st. If you want more information about this powerful conference, you can go to happyfilm.com. That's HAPI film.com. We'll be right back with more 360 Info Network after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to 360 Info Network with your hosts, Hamtonio, and yours truly, Vince Robinson. Our guest this morning is Asar Imhotep, a software developer, cultural theorist, and Africana researcher from Houston, Texas. His research focus is the cultural, linguistic, and philosophical links between the ancient Egyptian civilizations and the modern Bantu cultures of Central and South Africa. If you want more information about what this brother is doing, you can visit his website. It is asarimhotep.com, and that's ASARIMHOTEP.com. Again, asarimhotep.com. Brother Lynn?
Yeah, brother, sir. And,
yes.
It seems like your research has kind of gravitated you towards that the Bantu languages and tribes and something that spoke and dealt with that particular language and culture. I guess by doing that, and it led you to uncover a lot of the information in dealing with these languages and things. Why did you decide to, or what gravitated you towards that Bantu part of? Because there's a lot of languages and cultures, on the continent. How did you gravitate towards that?
Yes, it's rather the languages chose me. And
okay.
it came about as a result of reading a Congolese scholar by the name of Dr. Kimbwadende Kiabonseki Fukiao. I know that's a mouthful. But he wrote a text in 2001, or he published the second edition of a text. The first edition was called A Book Without Title, but in 2001, some additional information was added, and it became African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo. And I was hip to this text when it first came out by the late Dr. Asa Hilliard, who came to Texas Southern University to do a lecture. I was going to the University of Houston, which is right across the street at the time. And so, he got an advanced copy from Dr. Fukiao, and, he started talking about certain aspects of it. And so it interested me. And because I noticed, like, some of the stuff that he was talking about had some, and he was talking about his own cosmology and culture of the Bakongo people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is, in Zaire at the time, of his birth. But he was talking about his own culture, his own philosophy, his own language. But I'm seeing echoes of things that were comparable to what you would find in ancient Egypt. And so I immediately went to purchase the book, and I started reading the book, and it became my favorite book, of one of my favorite books of all time. And, I just got a gut feeling that, there was more to this text than meets the eye, and that, the comparisons that I'm seeing were not coincidence. However, I did not develop the skill set yet to prove my intuition. And so this would come over time and a few years later. But as a result of, studying the work of Foucault, and it got me more and more into learning about Bantu languages and cultures. And, like the Baluba people, the Rwanda people in terms of, like the Hutus, for example, or the people in Uganda, and especially the Amazulu and the, Mukaranga people or Bakaranga people in Zimbabwe, etc. And when I started exploring their languages and cultures, it became clear that the ancient Egyptian civilization, philosophy, language, and culture belong to what I call the Nsw universe. So Nsw is a root of Ba Nsw. Ba is a human plural prefix. So, the word Nsw means being or existence. And so the Ba Nsw are human beings. A singular Muntu or Mu Nsw is a human being, a person in the singular. So the Nsw universe, consists of those particular Bantu-speaking people, and I place the ancient Egyptian within that same sphere. And, the details of how that is very complex and deep, but just understand that there's been a lot of research done to demonstrate that the ancient Egyptian language and culture originates from the same group of people from which the Bantu speakers and the like have emerged. And this helps to explain the commonalities that I was first seeing in the African cosmology of the Bantu Congo. So it kind of just, coalesced naturally based upon that introduction to that particular text.
Yeah, so that, so this thing is tied in, all the way down to South Africa. We have remnants of the same kind of philosophy concept, and I think that's what needs to be noted as far as our listeners is concerned. We need to understand, because they come on TV and put up this great mystery like, where are the ancient Egyptians? Like a spaceship came and took them off the continent somewhere. You know what I mean? And I never forget the first time I went to Africa, and this keeper of the shrine, that we visited, came out and started, telling the story of the shrine. And within 2 minutes of his conversation, he said, and we migrated in sub-Sahara from Egypt. And I was like, whoa. What did you just say? And he telling the story about the migration, And I'm saying, well, dog, did they ever go over there and talk to the people to satisfy their curiosity of where the ancient Egyptians? So due to invasion, so we just spread it all the way through the whole continent. And I think that's very important for the listeners to understand that, they're there. You know what I'm saying? The culture there, who built these great civilizations, are there, and I think that's been the purpose of keeping us in the dark when it comes to that. Your thoughts?
Indeed, yes. You will find many of these oral traditions. For example, there's some texts that you can read in French about the 6 migrations over North Africa that, helped to somewhat populate what is now Senegal, Senegambia, among the Wolof, Sierre, and those type of people from ancient Egypt. And, for example, the Fulani, who are traditionally nomadic pastoralists, have been traveling back and forth from West and North Africa into Egypt and even Arabia since, 8 to 10,000 BCE. that's just been their lifestyle, and they have, moved back and forth throughout that particular line. And then you have others who moved as a result of going down, or what we say technically up the Nile, since the Nile flows from south to north. Upstream is in the quote-unquote south of Egypt. And so others have migrated back down through Sudan and went through Chad and went through, crossed over Lake Chad or around Lake Chad, into what is now Nigeria, Togo, Benin, and ended up in places like Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And so there's history there. So you have those types of migrations which have been documented, but you also have, of course, because the ancient Egyptians belong to a family of people, that certain of the culture and inheritance is the result of being passed down from generation to generation from the parent culture, and is not the result of migrations, so to speak. And so we got to understand that that's a source of the commonalities and the unity of different African people. And so it's not always the case that one could argue that, what you're seeing that is similar to ancient Egypt in places like West Africa or Central Africa is the result of Egyptians migrating. It is the result of the shared inheritance that they all share, from the parent culture. And it's also possible that, what you find in ancient Egypt didn't originate there. It came from some people from like Central or what is now West Africa, who migrated there as a result of, rumors of trade, and who came and settled and brought their culture there. So there's many possibilities and truths going on at the same time.
If I could jump in,
like a sharing thing.
As you mentioned these migrations, our brother Anthony Browder has discovered that there is the presence of Adinkra symbols within the Medu Neter. Do you have any awareness of the impact or the influence of the Akan or the Ashanti on the civilization of Kemet?
Not at the moment. I do know of issues of migrations or conversations of migrations that have settled into in what is now modern day Ghana from places like Sudan and Egypt. However, were they Akan first and foremost? I'm not sure. And if they were a significant group in ancient Egypt, and to what extent there could have been influence in that direction, I'm not quite sure. That is still an ongoing investigation for me, especially since I primarily focus on, Nigeria, Cameroon, Central Africa and the like, and ancient Egypt. So while I do have knowledge of like what goes on, or conversations about like Senegal and the Wolof people, for example, and Ghana, that hasn't been my focus to make, a definitive case or argument along those lines.
Okay. Just a side note, just recalling some time that I spent in Ghana a few years back, the chief in the village had a staff, and there were a number of staffs, actually, the pole that you spoke of earlier with the strips of cloth on it. But there was one staff that was really key, and that was the one that had the red ribbon on it. If somebody came to you with that staff, and the chief had sent them to you with that staff with the red ribbon on it, it meant that you got to drop everything that you're doing right now and get to a conference with the chief. So just a side note, I thought that was really interesting as you brought up their relationship between the poles and the strips of cloth.
Indeed. And remember that the chief this is something that I wrote about in my book, Nsw.t Bjt.j, King in Ancient Egyptian, which was published in 2016. And the king is, in reality, what we call a living ancestor. And the king is, in actuality, the embodiment of not only the kings that came before him or her, because a woman can be king in Africa. They represent the founding, the first king of that line. And so what they are really the spirit. They are the mouthpiece of the original king. And that's why you will see these particular poles and staff representing the netures or the gods, so to speak. And this is where they get the mistake of that the king is a quote unquote god in ancient Egypt. It's not in the same sense of, what Europeans would think when we're talking about a god. He is a living ancestor. And so he has been endowed with the power to make things happen. And that's all a spirit is, what you'll find in the languages of Africa. A spirit is simply a being that has the ability to make things happen that cannot be seen. Right? And I'm sorry?
As a creator.
Exactly. It's just a power, and power is the ability to make things happen. And so they are agents of power. They are the principal agents of change. And so when you elevate somebody to a position, a political position or whatnot, you essentially make them gods. But it's not in a sense that they are some kind of supernatural being, that just has this unlimited wielding power. It's just that you've given them the power to make things happen, to make change. Because a king originally was he served two roles. He was a resource manager, and he was somebody responsible for bringing rain. And rain is literally the source of prosperity and health for the people. Mm-hmm. And so these two things have kind of evolved over time as societies have gotten more complex. But it's still the same particular function. And of course, he's the chief military officer, for the army. But what you have done is you have elevated a certain person who is the resource manager, and he has the power to make things and command things to happen, so that the society can flourish and expand in the service of the community. And so, these are the things that we have to keep in mind in regards to kingship.
Yeah, and that's our. Well, we can't help but be a product of where we're at right now in our thinking, and that's what we need to make clear. We're a product of this type of thinking, because it's been bestowed on us, and we tend to take on those ideas and concepts that have been given to us from the Europeans of, a king and sitting around there, being served and grapes and dictate, you know what I'm saying? And we have that lodged in our conscious and subconscious mind. That's what it's about. But we don't understand that it's about serving the people, and you got to earn those particular things. And so, and through your research, and I listen to some of the things that you have to defend in doing your research when we talk about some of the language, because I think that's the key. And I thank God that I kind of latched on to that at an early age. I used to say linguistics was the key to clearing up a lot of this mess that we're going through. And so in ancient Egypt, they didn't use vowels as much in consonants. Do you think that's that has caused some issues about when we're dealing with interpretations of certain things, because, you know, when you're dealing with how high tech the language is and the culture is, just different little sounds can make a word have cast a different meaning. How crucial is that?
Well, we got to understand that the ancient Egyptians were just normal people like everyone else on Earth. You know, all groups of people have their geniuses, you know, their doctors, their craftsmen, their musical talents, and the like. And so, you know, like all other languages, the ancient Egyptian language or languages had vowels. When we talk about that, you know, that there's no vowels, we're only talking about, to our knowledge to this present day, that there are no vowels in the written script.
I see.
The spoken language had vowels, and this was evident at the stage of the Coptic language, where they actually wrote in the vowels when they adopted the Greek script. And so, but the language in the linguistics is very important, because the language is the carrier of the culture. It's the carrier of the psyche of the people. And if we want to understand better who they are, it is best to go through the language. And so, unlike, for example, the Yoruba people, if we want to know the Isheshe system or Ifa, you know, there are plenty of Babalawos and Iyanifas that we can go to and discuss with them their tradition. But you can't do that in modern Egypt, because it is now the Arab Republic of Egypt, and the religion is Islam, and the language is Arabic. And so what we're talking about in terms of pharaonic Egyptian culture and language, that is long dead and gone in that area. And so the people do not have memory of that there. And when you go there, you know, you do not get any kind of sense that, you know, the philosophy, the underlying culture is alive and well among them, as you would have even in places like, you know, Western, Central, and Southern Africa, even though a lot of these places are Christian and Islamic, you still feel the sense of the original African philosophy and culture present in these locations, right? That is not the same when you go to modern Egypt. So in order to penetrate the depths of the ancient society, we're going to have to go through the written records and the records that were told about the ancient Egyptians from other cultures who interacted with them. And so when we are looking at the language, we can compare what we know, because they did give us the consonantal skeleton, even though they did not provide the vowels. And, you know, as quiet is kept, that is more than enough for us to be able to do comparisons with other languages around the world. And not only are we able to compare the words and the lexemes and the graphemes, the morphemes of the words, and these are the grammatical parts of each word, with other African languages. The African languages now provide some much needed nuance to some of the philosophy and terms that you find in ancient Egypt. Okay. So, for example, the word ma'at that we are very familiar with, for those who are familiar with ancient Egyptian society, we know it to mean truth, justice, reciprocity, order, balance, harmony, right? But there are several different ma or ma'at words in the language. Because of the concept, because the vowels are not written, they all look alike to us, you know, as far as the graphemes are concerned. So it's the equivalent of just having the consonants in sequence in English, H, T. If we just have HT written down, the consonants, that can represent several different English words. For example, hot, hit, hut, but without, knowing the English language, you wouldn't and know the context for which these words were written. But that's why the Egyptian language also had what we call determinatives, which are pictures at the end of the words that were not pronounced, that provide context and clarity to exactly which word is meant.
Fascinating conversation, and we're going to get back to the breakdown that we're receiving from our guest, Asar Imhotep. He's the founder of the Madhu Ndela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture and the author of such works as Where is the Love? How Language Can Reorient Us Back to Love's Purpose, and NesuBiti in ancient Egyptian. So we're going to get back to more conversation when we return. This is 360 Info Network with Antonio and Vince Robinson. We'll be right back.
You're on.
Welcome back to 360 Info Network, where our guest is Brother Asar Imhotep. Again, he will be participating in the One Africa Power and Unity Conference that will take place in Detroit on April 30th and May 1st. You can go to hoppyfilm.com. That's hoppyfilm.com, HAPIFILM.com, and you can get your tickets. It is going to be live in person and virtual as well. So if you can't make the 3-hour drive to Detroit from Cleveland, you can check it out online and become edified by the many illustrious speakers who will be a part of that program. Brother Imhotep, this has kind of been burning as a question in me this morning as we talk about linguistics. There's a controversy over the N-word, and there are some who say that the etymology of the word is not as negative as we perceive it. I'm just wondering what your perception of the N-word is, and also the etymology of the word black, because it might mean something other than what we think that it means. What can you share with us about those two ideas?
Well, to my knowledge, the N-word is just simply a Latin word for black. And so it is just used as what we call a euphemism. A euphemism is where you just take an ordinary word and you give it a negative connotation. And so what they're really, jabbing at is the essence of who African people are, from their phenotypes to the richness in the skin color, to their language, to their culture, and everything else. And so it's just become a euphemism for African people, and making their whole being, their whole existence, to be something negative. And so it's regardless of its origin, it's the underlying connotation. First of all, it's not our word. It doesn't come from our languages. And so, regardless, it shouldn't be used to define who we are as a people. If we to be defined, we need to define words that come from ourselves and our language, in our languages, that speaks to actually who we are. And this is one of the reasons why I have suggested an ethnic name of Nkole, and Ba-Nkole being the plural for the people. And Nkole is one of those words that I mentioned that is cognate with the word Detcher, and it just means an eminent and powerful person. And so when you make it plural, it's an eminent and powerful people. And the people who make things happen or whatnot, spirit people and the like. That's a little bit different than just reducing us to a skin color. Now, to your other question, in terms of black, the word black is actually a word that has its ultimate origins in Africa as well. And it actually comes from a root meaning for fire and to burn. And so it actually comes in Indo-European languages on two semantic legs. So it is on one hand from the African root meaning fire and to burn, the semantic leg fire, burn, turn black or smoke. So this is where you get the word black meaning dark or soot from in Indo-European languages. But there's another semantic leg of that from the the semantic evolutionary path of of fire, burn, and then light. And so the other semantic path actually goes to white. And the same word black is the same word bleach in English, meaning to turn white.
Okay.
Right.
And so that's ultimately, simply what the words mean. So on one semantic end, it means dark or black, as we would say, and then in the other semantic leg, in the other variant of the word, it means white or to turn white.
So in your presentation, this end of the month and beginning of May, what in wrapping up, what are your main topic of discussion, and what you'll be bringing to that to the table of that illustrious panel?
Indeed. Yes. I will be teaching the audience how to use linguistics to recover ancestral memory and to use it as a tool or a weapon in intellectual warfare. And this is exactly what we find ourselves engaged in when people essentially wage war on you and use their power and resources to try to prevent you from learning your history and or to teach your history, to tell your history, to tell your own special cultural truths to the public. And so this is essentially the issue that we had with the conference, because it was originally supposed to be in Egypt, but there were some nationalists who were opposed to us coming there and talking about the Africanness of ancient Egypt and its connections to other Africans in general. And so, as a result of political pressures, it was postponed, and now it will be in Detroit on April the 30th and May the 1st. And, this is why it's essential that we understand the power of African history and of African people, and to equip ourselves with the proper research methodologies and tools that will allow for us to, stand boldly in the world. And when we're making these arguments and claims, for example, about the Africanness of ancient Egypt and how these survivals still exist amongst the people today.
Okay. His name is Asar Imhotep. He'll be one of the featured speakers at the One Africa Power and Unity Conference, April 30th and May 1st in Detroit at the Doubletree Hotel. For more information, you can go to happyfilm.com. That's HAPIFILM.com to get your tickets for that. Also, if you're interested in his books or what he's doing at present, you can go to asarimhotep.com. Brother Asar, thanks for joining us on 360 Info Network.
And thank you for having me.
All right. Brother Antonio, we got about 20 seconds.
Yeah, no, okay. Everybody get prepared. We're working on the June program, so stay tuned.
All right. Don't forget, check in the 360 Info Network Facebook page and the Larchmere Arts Facebook page. Thank you to our engineer, Tristan Sanchez. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace.
Peace.